from a national standpoint, most college football fans gravitate to offensive players, obviously, and then maybe grab one defensive player per big team and don't really understand the depth or the breadth of the talent on that side of the ball. And Kyle Hamilton's been that guy for Notre Dame. But my goodness, Cam Hart, and you let us know in the offseason a number of times how good he is, but it was great to see him really make game-changing type plays on a big stage.
Well, and I think that this is also a testament to how good of a coach Marcus Freeman and his coaching staff are. You know, I like to think I have a pretty good read on the team. You know, we talked about how good I thought Cam Hart would be, but I saw Cam Hart as a boundary corner, 6'3", 207, long boundary corner. Well, after the second game, and he had no pass breakups and no interceptions the first two games, they moved him to the field. Thinking, wait a minute, 6'3", 207-pound guy at the field. Okay, well, I guess I'll trust the coaches on this one. Well, in the two games he's been to the field side, he's had 4 total passes defensed. 3 of those passes defense have led to interceptions. He tipped the ball against Purdue. They got tipped, but picked off by a safety. And then he had 2 by himself. And you see, and you're like, oh, so they're putting that really long, rangy kid to the field, letting him play all that space. They're putting their guy that maybe isn't quite as athletic into the boundary. And then they're using their field safety more to play deep middle and come down against the run because Cam can play so. Oh, okay. Well, I guess maybe that's why Marcus Freeman makes a whole lot more money than I do, because, you see that and you're like, okay, great testament to them. But then that doesn't work if you don't have a kid like you saw on Saturday, Mark, who's incredibly long and rangy and can cover a lot of ground in a hurry. And he's a kid that's only played. I mean, he didn't move. He came to Notre Dame as a wide receiver. He didn't really move full time to cornerback until his sophomore. He played a little bit at the end of his freshman year. He's still learning the position, and he's gotten better and better each week. And you've got him in the secondary. You've got Jason Adamiyola, who's been brilliant so far at defensive tackle. Isaiah Foskey's got 3.5 sacks in 4 games. And Notre Dame played against Wisconsin with a rotation of 9 defensive linemen. Mark, the biggest guy they had was 280 pounds because Kurt Hinish got hurt. He's in the concussion protocol. He's their only big 300-pounder. And they still did what they did to that big physical O-line of Wisconsin that averages 312.2 pounds across the board. It's just a testament to the athleticism that this team has. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. This is the fastest team Brian Kelly's had. And remember, at one point in time, he had Will Fuller and Jalen Smith on the same team. Top to bottom, this is his fastest team. It's being masked because of how bad the offensive line is. But you don't think Clemson would like to be 4-0 right now and doing the things that Notre Dame is doing with a bad offensive line? I think they'd trade places with Notre Dame right now in a heartbeat.
And speaking of speed and a team that is known for speed and has been built on speed, of course, we're talking Cincinnati, the next opponent to come to South Bend. And Cincinnati has had that periodic showing against a near elite program like Georgia last year in the bowl game, of course, and has shown us that they can play with the big boys generally. But they will go to South Bend, of course, probably the most daunting game that they will have to face during this Luke Fickell era in which they've topped out as the best of the group of 5 programs. They did go to Columbus 2 years ago and were punched in the mouth 42-0 against the Buckeyes in 2019. So Cincinnati, Notre Dame, based on what you've seen from the Bearcats, I did watch most of the Indiana game. What are your concerns? Where do you think the Irish can take advantage?
Well, I think the concern is twofold defensively. You have a great corner in Ahmad Gardner, and Corey Bryant's a good football player too, but you have corners that are capable of playing on Kevin Austin and playing against Braden Lindsey and somewhat neutralizing the outside threat that Notre Dame has been able to throw at teams. And then you look at how bad Notre Dame's offensive line has been, and you say, okay, who's going to block Myjai Sanders? I don't know who that's going to be. And as we've seen, a defensive end can wreck a game. I mean, you and I both know that. A defensive end who just dominates, tackles who aren't playing well can really wreck a game. And those are my 2 biggest concerns. And because it is a defense that's very fundamentally sound, it's not super talented beyond the top maybe 3-4 guys. There are 10th and 11th starters not as good as, the 10th and 11th starter at Notre Dame, for example. Their top 2 or 3 can maybe play with just about anybody. And I think that's there where Notre Dame can take advantage. Okay, what are the matchups at linebacker, at safety, and the defensive line that we can take advantage of? It's a lot easier, as Notre Dame showed against Purdue with George Karlaftis. If you've only got 1 or 2 really good players, we can take that one or two, as a coach, we can take that one or two guy out of the game. Well, with Notre Dame, if your game plan is to take Isaiah Foskey out of the game, well, you got to deal with Myron Tungvaloa and Jason Adamiola and the linebackers and all that. If you want to try to avoid Kyle Hamilton, you got to deal with Cam Hart and Clarence Lewis and the Rovers and all those type of things. And same things, like I could say that about Clemson. I could say that about Georgia's defense. It's, and Cincinnati doesn't have that kind of depth. There's a drop off from their top 2 to their 3 and 4. And then there's another drop off from 3 and 4 to 5 to 11. And I think the other thing too, that's an advantage for Notre Dame is you have 2 coaches on the defensive staff that know the personnel at Cincinnati really well. Hey coach, just so you know, in practice, this kid bought on this move every time. The offense would beat us every single time we ran this move on this kid. Or, hey, this kid really struggles against this, right? Marcus Freeman knows Luke Fickell. So I guarantee you this offseason, you don't have those conversations the week of. You have those conversations in the summer. Hey, here's the things that are going to work there. So I think that helps. You could say Mike Denbrock has a similar advantage but Mike Denbrock has been gone from Notre Dame since 2016. This is a different program, different players, different scheme to a degree. So I think that certainly helps Notre Dame a lot. And this is a good Cincinnati offense, but it's not an elite explosive Cincinnati offense. You saw that against Indiana. And I don't think their line's great. It's big. It's not super athletic. And this is a Notre Dame defensive line that, in my opinion, is playing as good as anybody in the country right now.
Cincinnati got down in that game in Bloomington 14-0. Indiana was the much better team for about a quarter and a half, and then Cincinnati had a spur right before halftime to close it to 14-10. Micah McFadden, best Indiana, the captain, the best player on the defense. He was in there for 25 plays. Cincinnati was averaging 2 yards per play. He got called for targeting, left the game. Cincinnati took off from there. I'm not going to pin everything on his absence. It's still something to consider. And also the 14-point spread, a bit misleading, as Indiana was inside the 10, down 6 points late in the game, ready to take a 1-point lead, coughed it up inside the 10. Cincinnati took it from there with a touchdown to end the game.
It's kind of like the Notre Dame-Wisconsin game. It wasn't really a 28-point spread. It just kind of got that way. Like the Arizona-Oregon game this past weekend. So yeah, it was a much more competitive game.